In this episode, a silent predator stalks a mother and her small baby. It is starving, desperate for a meal before the harshness of winter sets in. Valerie and 10-month-old Adele choose the wrong place and the wrong time to take a walk in the woods, leading to one of the most disturbing bear attacks of all time. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying grizzly bear attack on Valerie and Adele Theoret. Welcome to Final Affliction. Germund Rosholt and his partner, 37-year-old Valerie Theoret, loved the outdoors. They were experienced in the wilderness and knew how to trap animals and live off the land. These were skills they wanted to impart to their 10-month-old daughter, Adele. In a world where technology dominates, they felt it was important to nurture their baby's innate interest in nature and the world around her. Valerie taught French immersion at an elementary school in Whitehorse, Yukon. She was much loved by those who knew her and was an active member of the Whitehorse community. In their spare time, the couple enjoyed exploring the wilderness. In 2015, they had bought a cabin which was situated northeast of Mayo. This is a remote, isolated community 250 miles north of Whitehorse. It was the perfect place to escape to. They had already spent 2 winter seasons there, and this would be their third, but their first with their new baby. In 2018, they flew into the area in the fall for their 3rd season in the cabin. They planned on staying there throughout the winter with their new baby until Valerie needed to return to her teaching job in the new year. But sadly, that would never happen. The young family had been there in the cabin for almost 3 months. They knew the risks of bears in the area, as it was a popular habitat for them. They took all the necessary precautions, making sure food was stored away appropriately, and any waste was secured in bear-proof containers a distance away from their cabin. The couple survived their long stints in the wilderness largely by trapping animals. As the harsh winter began to set in and December was just around the corner, Valerie unintentionally let her guard down. Up until then, she had religiously carried bear spray whenever she left the cabin. But now that they were well into the winter and the harsh weather was setting in, she assumed bears would be hibernating and would no longer pose a threat until emerging in the spring. But she couldn't have been further from the truth, and in fact, any bears still awake during the winter are desperate bears. They likely have not fed enough to build the fat reserves to make it through the cold, dark winter months, and are more likely to launch a predatory attack as a result. This is exactly what happened. The 3 of them sat down on the morning of November 26, 2018. They ate breakfast together in their warm, snug cabin. It was the last time Germund would see his beloved girls alive. The log burner was crackling in the corner of the room. Outside, the light was growing in the gloomy sky. A chilly wind rustled the leaves in the trees. Germund said goodbye to Valerie and Adele and stepped outside. He was off to set trap lines in the surrounding woodland. It was part of their daily routine and something he enjoyed doing. Valerie cleaned up and wrapped herself and baby up in warm clothes before heading outside. She then pulled the baby carrier over her head and placed Adele inside it. The 2 of them opened the cabin door and went off for a walk. Adele's little head bobbed along as she was carried on her mother's back. The sounds of nature filled their ears. Being outside together was a magical time, and the baby was taking in all of her surroundings. The fresh air was calming, and Valerie walked along the path from their cabin. But she was unaware that the 2 of them were being watched. Only moments before, a male grizzly bear had been ambling along the same path, its huge paws leaving prints in the soft mud. When it heard the cabin door open, it leapt off the path and hid in the undergrowth. The bear was starving, an 18-year-old male that had lived its entire life in that territory. It was a desperate individual, and there was no way he would survive the winter. Instead, he became desperate and searched for any food he could find. Only the previous day, he had come across a porcupine and had devoured it in one go. The quills of the porcupine, however, had pierced the bear's gut, causing severe pain and damage. The bear could see Valerie and her baby leaving the cabin and crept along in the undergrowth behind them. It moved slowly but purposefully. It was stalking them. Each footprint from the huge predator was silent on the ground. Not a twig broke, not a leaf rustled. It was an expert hunter, a silent and deadly predator, and there was nothing Valerie could do to stop it. When the bear was within striking distance and Valerie was still unaware of what was directly behind her, it suddenly launched its attack. It broke into a full gallop when it was within a few yards of the two girls. Valerie turned just in time to see a flash of brown before she was catapulted to the ground. Her baby screamed as it was crushed under the weight of the enormous grizzly and sandwiched between it and her mother. Valerie tried to kick the bear off, but she was pinned face down to the ground. Then came the fatal blow. The bear opened its jaws and bit down with crushing force behind the back of Valerie's head. The attack was over within seconds. There was little fight from Valerie, as the fatal blow had been delivered almost instantly. She had been caught completely unaware, and even if she had been carrying bear spray or a firearm, it is unlikely she would have had time to use them. Gjermund started heading home at mid-afternoon. He had set his traps and was happy with the work he had done. As he approached the cabin, he noticed fresh bear prints on the path. He immediately cocked his rifle. He followed the prints, which led worryingly towards the cabin. Then they veered off into the undergrowth. Gjermund scoured the scruffy brush for any signs of a bear and walked up to the cabin. He opened the door and called out to Valerie. There was no answer. He continued along the path towards their sauna, which was just along from the cabin. He thought Valerie and the baby may be warming up there. He clutched his rifle as he walked quickly, feeling a sense of danger in the air. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something didn't feel right. After walking cautiously down the path, Gjermund suddenly heard a low growl. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up on end. A shiver ran down his spine, and he felt his heart thundering in his chest. He knew what that sound meant. He was being watched, and he had surprised a grizzly bear, a bear that was defending its cache. In an instant, the bear suddenly rushed out of the undergrowth. It had been concealed by the bushes and trees lining the path Gjermund was walking along. He saw the flash of brown as it charged full pelt at him. Its ears were pinned back against its massive head, its jowls wet and jaws slightly agape. Gjermund didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired a shot. It hit the bear, but the beast kept running at him. He fired again and twice more. He struck the bear in the chest, and it crashed down to the ground, skidding on the wet mud and landing at his feet. It was dead. Gjermund called out to his partner and daughter. He was desperate to find them and began searching the woodland running alongside the path. That's where he found them. Two motionless bodies lying on the path just 200 yards from where he had shot the bear. He rushed over to them, but tragically, it was too late. The grief he must have felt would have been immeasurable. To have their lives ripped away in an instant was heartbreaking, and Gjermund's life was turned upside down that day. Their enjoyment for the great outdoors had ended in tragedy, and for Gjermund to lose his young daughter as well before her life had really begun was almost too much to take. Officials performed a necropsy on the bear and reported how emaciated it was. It had been struggling to find food and had turned to people as a last resort. They warned that, although bears are usually hibernating from November through to February, some are still sighted in December and January. They want to change the narrative that bears aren't around during the winter. It is dangerous to let your guard down when you least expect bears to make an appearance. Despite this, officials also said that there was nothing Valerie could have done. Although it is a cliché, she and her daughter really were in the wrong place at the wrong time. A predatory bear is skilled at tracking its prey and sneaking up on it without being noticed. That is how it hunts. And whilst during a defensive attack a bear will likely walk away once it sees the threat had been neutralized, during a predatory attack its aim is to kill, and it won't stop until you meet your terrifying final affliction.